If you've been paying attention to the latest buzz in the sewing world, you may have noticed that Michaels is launching their knit and sew shop. But is it all that it's cracked up to be? A lot of other YouTubers have been weighing in. And if you've been watching any kind of sewing content on YouTube, then you've probably seen this ad.
Introducing the new.
Now, I don't know about you, but I did go to my latest Michael store and check it out. I actually went to two different Michael stores to kind of see what was going on and check it out to see what the buzz was all about and if it really looked anything like the commercial. Bad news, it doesn't. At least in my local stores. Now, the stores I went to were here in Houston, Texas. I stopped at the number one store in Houston, which is on Westland inside the Loop. And so that's like the downtown store because it's like the most inner located store here in Houston. And that was the biggest disappointment. And so I was like, wow, I can't talk to all of you about this because it was so disappointing. And I was like, well, let me go check out another store, which was on the southwest side of Houston at the Westheimer and Hillcroft location. And that one was a little bit better and gave me a little bit more optimism as far as this whole rollout is going moving forward. Now, I don't know about you, but losing Joann's um, wasn't, I mean, I think we all had very mixed feelings about it because we all recognized that it was this huge, big box store that basically bought out all the individual regional stores, Cloth World here in the Texas and the southern part of the country, and then basically turned it into this whole cookie cutter, um, you know, monstrosity where less than a third of the store was actually fabric and it was full of all kinds of other things for, crafting and woodworking and, a huge section for knitting, cake decorating, scrapbooking, all that stuff that Michael's already had. And so it left a lot of us wondering why the expansion was even happening in the first place. And then fast forward, suddenly all these mega stores are closing, the company files for bankruptcy, and suddenly we're left with no local store to run up to and buy fabric. Now, many of you have commented on the fact that we should support local small stores and give them the business instead of giving it to these big huge corporations that don't care about any of us. But I'm in the fourth largest city in the US, and the options for fabric are extremely limited, which is a little bit crazy. Yes, we have some quilt shops around town, but I think many of us have discussed that we don't really want to sew with just broadcloth cotton fabric. Yes, you can use it. Yes, sometimes fabric stores, quilting shops will carry poplin, or maybe they'll carry like a Madras plaid, or some other kind of interesting non-specific quilting cotton. But it's hard to find, and those shops are few and far between. So today we're going to be talking about all things with the rollout of the knit and sew shop. And I'm so glad that all of you are joining me today. Let me just scroll through the comments and say hello to some of you. We've got Christina in Austin. Hey, Christina. Eileen in Wisconsin. Someone in Phoenix, RD Manley. I don't know your first name, so let me know. Diana down in Richmond. So I'd love to know what your shop down there looks like. I drove past it the other day. Sue, also in the Richmond Rosenberg area here. Carrie in Salt Lake City, Utah. Deborah in Massachusetts is saying that her Michaels hasn't added any more fabric than they used to have, which is very sad. And my friend Jen is here, weighing in. She used to work at Hancock Fabrics back in the day before they filed for bankruptcy. So what are the stores looking like? Because, when you watch this ad that I showed you, Hey, Linda, thanks for joining in. It's very much, wow, that looks great. It really does kind of look like Joann's. But when you actually go into your store, it doesn't. And I did take a little bit of video in my local store, the better looking one, not the worst looking one. So let me share that with you because, wait, I got to open another window. Unable to screen share. Okay. I don't know what's happening. It's not happy with me right now. Um, so basically, it's not very fabulous. It doesn't look anything like the commercial. When I went, it looks a lot more knitting than sewing. And that's not to say that Michael's didn't already have a huge knitting section anyway, because that's where I used to buy knitting yarn when on the rare occasion I have made scarves. I would go to um, Michael's, pick up a couple of, skeins of yarn, whip up a quick scarf, and then, that was my knitting for the year. As mentioned, it is always warm here, and scarves are not used very often. So Michael's already had like a large knitting section. So for them to open this as a knit and sew shop for all of the Joann's fans, I think it's kind of laughable because you already had that. That's not for Joann's fans, which I think we all have mixed feelings about that being categorized that way. But I will say that there are a few things that are okay. Um, so let's see who's saying this. Iris is saying that Richmond only has small stores or quilting shops. Hobby Lobby added a rack of licensed fleece. Yes. So we got a lot of going on in the comments, and everybody's relaying how much they missed Hancock Fabrics. Yes, I agree. Hancock Fabrics was where I shopped once Joann bought out Cloth World. But back in the day when they both existed, Grandma would take me to both shops, and we would look at fabric at both of them. So it's kind of one of those things where, you know, it's missed, and they went bankrupt first. So back to the local store. So let me see if I can make this happen. Give me a sec while I move things around and try and open another window. Because I do want to show you guys this. Hold on, let me pause it. There we go. Okay. So let me try again. There we go. Okay, so this is the store here in Houston that is over on Westheimer at Hillcroft. So it looks nice, They have a little bit of, I'm going to mute it because the music was very loud that day. Okay, apparently I can't. We're going to have to listen to dance hall days. So you can see lots of yarn, just like it used to be. No differences, no nothing. And then you've got, okay, we got some interfacing here. Let me pause it. We got some interfacing here on the right. Yay, that's great. Interfacing is one of those things I always forget, or I find that I don't have enough or the right kind once I actually start cutting out my fabric and needing to get to that interfacing step. Let me back up a little bit so you can see. This is all licensed character fabric, which means it's 100% cotton or cotton poly blend. And it's basically only appropriate for something you'd make for children, unless you're making something like a book bag or something like that. Let's continue down the aisle to see if there's anything that's a little bit more interesting. There is some batting down here at the bottom, which you can see. There's some flannel, more licensed, a different view of all the licensed character fabric. I love these. Welcome to our creative community. So that is the knit and sew shop over at that store. And then I did take a second video. Let me get that one open. And to kind of show you what notions and type of things they're carrying at that point. So this is the at the end of the aisles against the back wall. They have some, stitch and bond. There's a lot of space for notions that in theory they will be putting out. They do have a good selection of scissors and rotary cutters and blades and mats. So that's helpful if you need one of those. Um, but that's kind of it. It's not a whole lot of stuff yet. That store looked like it was still in the process of being stocked. And they were, I was actually filming and there was a lady who I think was one of the managers who was like, "Can I help you with something?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm just looking at fabric." And she goes, "Well, is anything wrong?" And I'm like, she's like, "I saw you filming." And I'm like, "No, no, I'm making a YouTube video about this." I said, "I'm going to be doing a live stream." So, I was like, I went to the Wesleyan store and there's nothing there. And so I came over here and your store is very nice and organized. So then she was happy. And she's the one who actually told me that the Wesleyan store is the number one selling store here in Houston. And there was no knit, Diana. It was licensed cotton prints. That's it. The fact that they even had any interfacing was surprising to me. The other store on Wesleyan only had the licensed character prints, and it had some Halloween costume fabric. So that cheap, like $6.99, or it's satin and like the lace spider web overlay, that kind of fabric for Halloween. That's all they had. Um, and it was only one side of one aisle at the very back of the store. And then there's like a side back wall that had notions on it, which was mostly empty. The only thing I have to say is they did have a fully stocked Coates and Clark thread thing, like the one I have. And so that was something in that, you know, if you run out of thread, you can go pick some up, because that's another thing, is like sometimes you just need a specific color. It wasn't like the full color ranges like we used to have. It is the Coates and Clark XP thread, which is the thread that's specific for garment sewing. And that's the kind I use. That's what my machine likes. So let's see. Patricia said that hers only had brown vinyl. I did see some brown vinyl at the Wesleyan store, which I thought was kind of funny because I'm like, ugh, yeah. And let's see, Linda's saying it seems that they just stuck it in and didn't really take the time to understand the sewing community. No, they didn't. They really didn't. That's one of the things I think that I kind of wanted to talk about today is, they've already had the knitting aisles, and it's usually like, at least two solid aisles, both sides, all knitting. And so that didn't change. They've always had like embroidery on one side of one aisle, and then the other side is usually like pillow forms and other miscellaneous kind of like fabric related crafts, like latch hook kits, or things like that, like embroidery or cross stitching. So they've always had those aisles. So those aisles didn't really change. All they did was try and jam in fabric around that. And then they put up some signage that said knit and sew shop. And I think that's what the frustrating part of it is. They're showing this ad, which I'm pretty sure was in a studio that they put together to make it look like that. Or maybe they went to one of the old empty Joann stores and set this up to make it look like they have a lot of fabric, and that's what, they're going to be selling, and that's what the shop's going to look like. I don't see there being a way to jam fabric into existing Michaels stores, because there's no space. There's not a lot of space in a Michaels store to add a whole new line of merchandise, and their sewing section has always been very minimal. At my store, before the whole Joann's bankruptcy thing and before Michael bought the intellectual property rights to the trademark and, repackaging some of their goods and all that stuff, it was like just a wall that had like, random scissors, some needles if you needed something like that. It had safety pins, it had, heat and bond and stitch witchery and stuff like that for like sewing, non-sewing projects. And it's one of those things that you're like, okay, well, this is pretty much the same, and they have some fabric. when you look online, that's also kind of sad in that it's just when you look at it, you're like, this is worse than what Joann's used to look like. And let's take a look at that together because, that's a whole nother thing of, um, you know, this one. Okay. Because it's like, number one, nobody really wants to buy fabric online. We have all agreed that we would rather go get it in person. So when you look at their fabric types that they have available, the ones in the store are pretty much the licensed and character fabrics and the apparel and costume. Okay. I didn't see any quilting fabric at all, no home decor. Seasonal was some pumpkin and Halloween fabric. Um, you know, there was no fleece, but I suspect it's coming. And they had some cotton solid. So let's go into the apparel and costume because I looked at this yesterday and I was like, most of this fabric is not anything anyone would actually sew apparel with. So we've got faux fur. Here's some jersey knits. It's not available in store, as you can see. This is something being sold by Fabric Depot. I don't even know what that is. So what I did was I came over here to let's see. I thought they said they had use care. They did just, I don't know. They might be updating this. Brand. No, we don't care about brand, fabric weight, no material. There we go. You can see that there's a lot of polyester, as usual, which we all came to expect from Joann's. This is all costume fabric as it is. It's not exciting. And see, it's not available in store. Okay, so we got some white costume satin that's available at the store in Westheimer. Let's go look at some more options over here. As far as I know, yesterday when I looked at it, it actually had type. Maybe because I actually specifically pulled up denim. Let's just type in denim. So you can see kind of what the options are. And I was really kind of shocked at how bad it was this black denim. That's the one I looked at. And of course, they've got coupons, but we'll get to that a little bit later. So this is Fabric Merchant's black denim. This is their picture. Wow, great job, Michaels. You didn't even follow along with the not great website that Joann's had. You just kind of made it even worse. It's not even draped on anything. Let's look at this blue one. That one also only has one picture. Not really a lot of information. $9.99 a yard, gives you the width, 100% cotton, use and care, not telling us anything about the weight of the fabric in ounces per yard or GSM, which would be helpful. It's just not fabulous. So if you're going to shop online, I think that we would all rather shop at a real fabric store where they actually give you all that information, where they show you the fabric drape on a dress form, or there's a little short video like Mood has, where they're actually holding the fabric and, shaking it so you can see how the fabric moves and things like that. So I'm not really clear on their logic behind this and thinking that they're going to roll this out, have some minimal fabric options in their store, and then get us to all buy it because we're Joann's fans. I mean, I think we've all had very mixed feelings about Joann's. There are comments in the chat about people not really shopping for garment fabric at Joann's. I think Lee Aaron said that. Primarily bought notions. If I get notions and Gutermann thread at Michael's, I guess I'd be happy. No Gutermann thread yet. Maybe they'll carry it. My guess is they're going to stick with Coates and Clark. I have Diana, have also heard that Walmart is phasing out a lot of their fabric in their stores as well. Let's see, a trip to New York, yes, for sure. Okay, so the cutting table was actually funny. The store in Westland had no cutting table, so I don't know what they were planning to do with the fabric if anyone wanted to buy it. I mean, I guess they could take it over to the the photo framing area, because there's a really big table there that does have like a tape measure on it to measure mats and frames and things like that. There was no cutting table. The cutting table at the Westheimer store was one of those small kind of sewing cabinet type cutting tables, for lack of a better word. It was smaller than the one I have in my room. And the cutting mat on top of it was smaller than the one I use, and mine is 24, let me see, 24 by 36 inches. That was on the whole top with one leaf up. So not a lot of space. And, if you have had fabric cut out, which I guess we all have at some point, you need to be able to roll the bolt out and have it supported to be able to pull the yardage off of the fabric and then cut it. So where's that bolt of fabric going to be? Because there's no room on this tiny table, which, by the way, was set up in the middle of an aisle next to some Christmas tree displays. So that's a whole nother thing. It's just very strange. Moving on, as far as notions go. So there were some Renegade zippers, not the YKK zippers that Joann's used to carry. I've never heard of this brand. They were only in black, white, and navy, and they were just standard zippers. They were not invisible zippers. So there was space for more things to be added, but I don't know about you. I prefer to use YKK zippers because those are the best zippers. Those are the ones that we've been sewing with. That's what they have had at Joann's and Joann's and Hancock's back in the day. They're kind of like the industry standard zipper. And if I have to, I will just order zippers either from the WowWack catalog, where that they are sewing apparel quality, or I will order them from SIL Thread in New York, which I featured in my New York video. I will put a link in the description below so you can go check that out. They have a massive, massive online inventory of zippers for every zipper you could possibly want, including a little zipper tape chart that you can buy with little zipper tape samples of every single color YKK makes. And then they pretty much carry all the lengths so you can get exactly what you need. That's what I would rather do. Yes, it does require some advanced planning and ordering and waiting and then getting those zippers, but I think in the long run, it's going to be better quality than what they're selling at the store. So, Christy, I have heard that they are opening a Mood Fabrics here. I have not seen anything official. That would be awesome. And hopefully it will be somewhere centrally located. So, it's easy to get to. That's my thought. If they had opened it in the old Joann's, like in Meyerland, that would be super awesome because that's close to me and it's a huge space. So they would have enough space for fabric. But yeah, so Ash is saying that they've heard that you can't get continuous yardage cut online. So if you oh wow, that's a mess. 3 yards and 3 1-yard pieces. I don't know. I would not order fabric online from Michaels. I feel like it's just a setup for disaster, frankly. I don't know if that's true or not, but just my personal opinion. I don't think their descriptions look good. Their prices aren't cheap. And why would you risk it? Why would you risk not being able to touch fabric? I'd rather go to an online apparel fabric store like Mood or like Marcy Tilton Fabrics that is put together by people who know fabric, and the descriptions give you an idea. You can actually search by type of fabric. So if I want lawn, or if I want file, or if I want poplin, you can go look by that. And if I want like a melon wool, then you can go get those actual specific fabrics, and that they're categorized correctly because the people who created the website know about fabric. I don't believe that the people who created the fabric listings on Michaels really know anything about fabric, and they certainly don't know how to photograph it to make people want to buy it. So Nadia is saying she wished they would just get rid of the kids' crafts and toys. Everything is cheap, high prices, and very cheap. Yeah, especially when you can go buy a lot of that stuff from, other secondary retailers like Marshalls and TJ Maxx and Ross. They have a lot of those crafty little kid kits. I'm assuming that maybe they'd once been at Michaels and got discounted down. Walmart also has all that kind of stuff. So to me, it very much feels like Michaels is setting itself up for the same problems that Joann's had. Not only are they trying to open this knit and sew shop and jam it into their current stores, they are also now doing a whole thing about balloons and all of that that they got from Party City. And they're trying to be like the one stop shop for all of those kind of things. And I think based on what happened to Michaels, we all know that did not work. Now, moving on, it's just not great. So Kat Lude is saying that she gets her notions and thread from Wawak. Yeah, I've heard good things about Wawak. I have not ordered from them specifically. I think I'm going to try and get some different interfacing samples and put them together in a book, so then I kind of can decide what I want to order for what I use primarily. I think that's a good thing. But I think that, one of the complaints about Joann's closing is that a lot of people don't have access to fabric stores. And I think Michaels is trying to capitalize on that. But once again, they didn't ask anybody who actually makes apparel what they wanted. They just assumed that I guess, bulk of what they carried at Joann's was sufficient, and that's what they would just do. I mean, the number of licensed character fabrics, I mean, it was an entire aisle, 2 rows, as you could see in my video, of fabric that, what are you going to do with that? You're not making apparel with it. You may make some stuff, pajamas, maybe for kids. Like, it's not super soft. So, I wouldn't recommend that. I do something else that was a little bit more, wearable. But that's what they've got, and I suspect fleece will be rolling out in any additional fabric aisles that they add, because for some reason everybody thinks that's what we apparel sewers want. We want these cheap licensed character fabrics. We want some cheap costuming fabrics, and we want more fleece because that's just going to solve all of our problems. I mean, just because Joann's carried these things doesn't mean this is what we went to Joann's for. So if you're watching along, you've got an opinion, let me know what you bought at Joann's, because what I liked, what I would buy, I did buy knits, because that is something that I don't really have a lot of in my stash, and I'm getting more comfortable sewing knits on my serger. And the thing about knit patterns is they're more forgiving than woven fabric, and so they're a little bit quicker to whip up and put together, and I don't have to go through this whole tissue fitting process to make sure everything fits really well and looks really good. You can just get the stretch on the knit, figure out what size I need, and then cut it out, stitch it up on the serger, and it's a really quick process. So I did buy a lot of knits. Yes, a lot of them were poly cotton. I do have some that are lyocell knits, which is a type of rayon, so not 100% synthetic. But so that's one of the main things I bought. I always bought my interfacing at Joann's because it was easy to just run up there with a little swatch of my fabric and be like, okay, what's the right weight for this? Because that's one of those things that you really want to be able to touch, is interfacing, to determine the weight, because I have some lightweight interfacing that is not that lightweight. A featherweight interfacing is actually lighter. So, that's one of those things where I like to be able to touch it. And that's why I'm really considering, ordering from Wawak and putting together like an interfacing like swatch book. So then I can kind of make a more informed decision of, what I want to use regularly, and then order it directly from them. So I've got it on hand. The other thing I would buy at Joann's, I would buy zippers, and I would buy bias tape when they had it in stock, which, let's face it, the last year of Joann's, bias tape was like finding a unicorn. And I would buy thread from them because it was easy to just run up there with my fabric, match really quickly, and then, buy that. So I don't think Michaels did any kind of a survey with former Joann's customers to find out what we liked and what we didn't like. I think it was just very much a, hey, we're going to do what we want to do because we're a big corporation and that's how we run things. So let's see. Polly's saying she was a manager at Joann's years ago, mostly bought quilty fabric. Garment fabric was a great buy if you had an employee discount. Let's see. Michael's, Elaine saying her Michael's is too small for a nice fabric area. Yep. Yeah, smaller mat. I mean, I'm saying like they had one mat. I have two mats on my table. I'd be like, I can comfortably roll out a bolt of fabric and cut what I need, and it doesn't fall off the table. So, Sandra is saying, let me pop some of these on screen so y'all can see them. It's an insult and the height of hubris to think we're going to flock to Michael's when they aren't even doing a minimum to properly sell the fabric or offer a real selection. 100%. I agree. Lysandra's asking, what is the name of the online site for zippers in New York? It's called SIL Thread, SIL, and then the word thread, all is one word, .com. Like I said, if you want to see the store and all the zippers they have, you can check out my New York video from this year in April. I'll put a link in the description below so you can go watch that. They have other kinds of notions too, which are all really great. And it will be, let's say Christy said, okay, it's on their website. It'll be on Alabama. Now I'm wondering if they're taking over or they're going to be near the old high fashion store, because that would be really cool. They weren't quite on that. Let's see. Diana's saying, have you heard of Silhouette? She sells fabric online, $14.99 more. Sometimes she gets fabric from Paris. She's in Dallas. Yes, I have. I get kind of picky about my fabric, and I like, I love Mood. It's my favorite. I did watch a lot of Project Runway back in the day. And so when I actually got to go, it is everything it looks like it should be. It's actually so much bigger than it is on the show. And everybody that works there is unbelievably nice and knowledgeable. That's the best part about going to Mood, is that the people who work there really know their stuff. Like I was in the the shirting department getting stuff cut, and I was talking to the guy cutting out my fabric, and he was like, I was like, how much do I need to make a shirt for my husband? And thankfully Dan was there to look at him, and he goes, you need X amount of yardage, all that kind of stuff. And he did tailoring. He had his own tailoring sewing business on the side when he wasn't working at Mood. And he was super helpful in helping me decide if I should line a jacket or not line a jacket, and what kind of lining I should use if I wanted to do that. He recommended not lining, extending facings, and very technical details of what I should do, which was very, very cool. So there was the guy who was in the leather area, because they do sell some gorgeous leathers, who actually had his own leather goods company that he, and so he was extremely knowledgeable about leather. Everybody that I've ever talked to at Mood who was helping me either cut fabric or locate things within the store, super, super knowledgeable. So I hope that somehow they can make that happen here in Houston. Maybe I need to go get a part-time job working for them and quit my lawyer job. And then I can do more YouTube and fabric and just be in the whole world of that all the time and not have to go to court. So I don't know. We'll see. Probably not. But yeah, it's one of those things that, it's a dream. It's a dream. Let's see. Sandra is saying that she thinks that Michaels is going to fail at this. I would suspect the same. I don't know if any of you ever shopped at fabric.com back in the day. We're talking, let's see, when was that? 2016, 2017, 2018. They were out of Georgia, north of Atlanta, and they had a fantastic website. I ordered fabric from them over the years. Really, really great. If you just happened to order and it was like the end of the bolt, they would put a little sticker on your fabric that said winner, winner, chicken dinner. You got the end of the bolt, because they just added in. And so then maybe I ordered 3 yards of fabric and I got 3.5 yards of fabric because it was the end of the bolt of fabric, which was very cool. So they were doing very, very well in the online fabric space. And then Amazon bought them, thinking that they could transition into online fabric. But here's the problem. People at Amazon don't know how to cut fabric. And they also can't really warehouse fabric the same way you warehouse goods at Amazon. So it basically turned into you could buy pre-cut yardage on Amazon from what had been fabric.com, and it all just basically fell apart. And I kind of suspect that's what's going to happen with Michaels, because they aren't in the business of fabric, and they don't seem to really care or want to know what any of us thinks. Um, Lots of comments about how awesome Wawak is. Great things, lightning speed. I have their catalog because I just thought it would be really fun to just have it. I don't know if they update it every quarter. Can someone let me know if you know, if that's the case? Because I need another one. Mine's from last year, but I did really enjoy going through it. The So Bonnie's saying that she called the Michaels in Waco, and they said they were in the process of making changes, but it will be a few months, and that she was hopeful. I hope so too, because I'm pretty sure in Waco, your only other option is like a quilt shop, if they have any. I'm sure they have at least one quilt shop in Waco. But do they have interfacing? Do they have zippers? Do they have buttons? You know, do they have things that people need when they sew clothing? Because none of that is really required with, quilting. Polly's saying Hancock's did the same thing. I think the problem with Hancock's is that they started carrying all that extraneous, cheap, I don't know what it was, like decorative small pieces of furniture. Like, I don't know what to call it. And putting that in the store for some reason that had nothing to do with sewing. So hi, Pam. Thanks for joining us. Okay, so Cold Before Now, I don't know your name, is saying that licensed character fabric was something Michaels carried before Joann's closed. There was never any fabric at my local Michaels prior to the Joann's IP acquisition. So it's one of those things. Randy says that she bought cotton for toiles because it was cheap, but never anything else at Joann's. Yeah, I bought like Sandra, I bought reasonably priced apparel fabric. Didn't want the finest fabrics. Most of the time, not an expert sewer, but I'm enthusiastic. That's all that matters, Sandra. Enthusiasm is going to get you there. Yeah, I bought muslin too. Lysandra's saying she bought muslin there. I did too, and zippers from Joann's. Yeah, I didn't really buy a lot of fancy fabrics. I did buy I think I bought like a stretch velvet once because I needed something for a holiday party. And, but for the most part, it was just basic, things that I needed. I did buy lining there on occasion because I'd be like, oh no, I need to line this. And that was that 100% polyester lining that makes you smother if you use it. If you've used it before, you understand what I'm talking about. So let's see. Okay. Michaels does not seem to be selling patterns. I don't know if that's something that might happen. As far as the auction process and the purchase by the new buyer and investment firm of the pattern companies, there was no contract with Michaels to sell patterns prior to that happening. So even though Walmart and Hobby Lobby were listed as contracts that they were going to continue with, it doesn't seem that Walmart and Hobby Lobby are necessarily going to continue to move forward and carry those patterns. I have heard from many of you that, your Hobby Lobby is phasing out patterns and they've told you that, buy what you want, they're on sale, end of story. I haven't seen patterns at my Walmart in a long time. I don't know that they ever carried them. It is one of the newer Walmarts that's opened in like the last 5 years. So I don't know. It does not seem like that is happening now. If you have been on the simplicity.com website, you can see that all their patterns are very close to full price. And there have been some emails that have gone out. No, that was a wholesale account for me. Never mind. They're still restructuring how they're going to sell patterns and what they're going to do moving forward. So it's not known. I don't see where Michaels is going to put patterns. If Michaels did carry patterns, that would be one of the things that I think people would actually like, because then you could, go up and sit at the table and flip through the books and see what the designs were coming out and maybe buy some patterns. But it's one of those things that I don't think that's necessarily going to happen. I suspect that with the, pattern companies being their own entity now, things are going to change very significantly in that they're not going to be cheap anymore. I think that selling them at Joann's and Walmart and Hobby Lobby and having these constant sales probably put a big dent in their profits. I don't know specifically because obviously I'm not in their corporate realms to say this. This is just a thought. I was talking with my friend Lee, who owns a fabric shop in Smithville yesterday, and she was saying that that's why, as a small shop, she could never carry any of the big four patterns because they were cost prohibitive for small shops. She's like, we'd have to have so many in order and in stock, and we have to place a certain sized order. And she's like, we could only buy them for 50% off of the list price. And then, here goes Joann selling them for $1.99 and $2.99. She's like, we could never compete with that. So it wasn't economically feasible to make that happen. And I can confirm that as a, sewing instructor, when I have a friend who is also a Palmer Pledge certified instructor, and she did reach out to Simplicity about, getting some patterns to teach, the learn to sew patterns and things like that, she could buy them at 50% off. But, that's one of those instances where, well, then it's cheaper to just wait for a sale online. I don't think that's going to happen anymore after this whole new era that we're entering with simplicity.com, but we'll see. Let's see. Sandra's saying there's a huge opportunity out there for low to moderately priced fabric and craft store can employ real sewers and crafters at the corporate level and tap into the real demand. The problem, of course, being that fabric prices are going up because they're primarily produced overseas. That's kind of the issue at this point. So, we'll see what happens. I know that if you're in different parts of the country, you may have access to different types of fabric stores. I was talking to a friend of mine, Sari, over at Seamwork, and she's in Portland, and she says that Portland has some really great apparel stores and actually invited me to go visit, to go shopping. And I know that San Francisco has some stores, LA has stores. Obviously, New York still has a whole lot of stores, maybe not as many as they used to back in the day. But, depending on where you are, you may have more access to, decent apparel stores. I guess one day we will here in Houston when Mood finally opens. I did go to Fabrictopia, which I think is a Texas chain. If you have it outside of Texas, let me know. I was actually driving over to the Michaels on Westheimer and I missed my exit, and so I had to go down Fondren, and they have moved into a bigger location. So I was like, oh, let me just pop in because I'm turning right here anyway. And they had a much better selection than they used to. They have everything organized very, very neatly. There are signs with prices on all the different areas of fabric. They do have the fiber content. So like linen, it'll be like, cotton, linen, blend or whatever. They had knits that were like 100% polyester, and then they had cotton poly knits. They did have some wools. It is still mostly, at least I'd say about a third of the store is fancy apparel fabric. So, satins and charmeuses and faux shantung silks and all kinds of stuff like that to make more evening, quinceañera, prom dress type stuff. They had a lot of lace overlay and all that kind of stuff. I did not see any interfacing, which is one of the things I was looking for. They did have a very good selection of serger thread in a variety of colors, so I made a mental note of that. And then they also had a good selection of zippers. I don't know what brand they were because they were all in like little cubbies by length and color. So, that's an option. I know that they do have one over in San Antonio, but maybe, that's one of those things. Let's see. Gail's saying that in Columbus, Ohio, Michael's did not add fabric to the stores. They did open a few new Michael Joann's in the rural areas. Not haven't been, not sure if I'm going. Yeah. I mean, if their plan is to recreate Joann's on a smaller level inside of their existing stores, I think they're going to be very limited in what they can do. And, as someone mentioned, they are rolling out Christmas. Halloween is taking up a huge section of the store right now. That's all in the seasonal section in the front of the store, which rotates out anyway. So I don't think that having fabric is affecting that at all. I think they're still just going to cram fabric in next to the knitting and embroidery where they have some space. I don't think that, they're the ones who are planning this rollout now right before Christmas. And so that's all part of their plan, not any of ours. Nancy says, hi from Ohio. Let's see. Kay is saying that Fabric Mart is like that when it comes to extra fabric. They cut very generously with every order. That's been my experience. Yeah, fabric.com was always it was never less than what you ordered. So, sometimes when you go, and I did have this experience at Joann's where the woman cutting the fabric didn't know how to cut fabric, because this was in the mega store and all the ladies who knew how to cut fabric retired and did not go to that store. And I wasn't paying attention to her because I was getting a bunch of things cut, and some of my yardage was shortcut. So it wasn't like I'd cut like 2 yards. It would be like a yard and 5/8. So I didn't have like a complete yard, but she put 2 yards. So I paid for 2 yards, and that's obnoxious. Let's see. Oh, the current Wawa catalog expires 12/31/25. I think I got mine at the beginning of the year. So that is good to know. I will definitely order mine for next year. Maybe they'll just send it to me. I'm not sure how that works. Let's see. Fabric stores near Plano. I think Dallas is going to be your best bet, Carolina. I have not gone fabric shopping in Dallas. I do hear that there are a bunch of stores that are, I think they're in the Dallas area. But I mean, Plano's not too far. So Carolina is asking for any recommendations of anybody in the Dallas Metroplex area. So let's see. Lisa's saying that the drawers at her Walmart are empty. Yeah, I haven't seen even pattern cabinets at Walmart in years. And then Kat Lude is saying that the only patterns left at Hobby Lobby are McCall's at 99 cents. Yeah. Christy, thank you for the email. I appreciate it. Susan, hello. Sandra's saying tariffs are a huge issue. Yes. Unfortunately, the fabric industry used to be primarily in the Northeast, in, Vermont, Massachusetts, New Hampshire. That's where all the textile mills used to be back in the day. And then with the cheap labor and production overseas, everything started moving over there. I'm going to guess in the 80s, 80s and 90s, I'm guessing it kind of just all petered out, and I guess it just wasn't profitable for those same big companies to manufacture here as it would be overseas. And then that's kind of how we got into this mess. Now, that's kind of my thoughts on that. The tariffs are an issue, but I think the other issue is that production in the US has not been in the US for a very long time. Now, on a positive note, I did get a email from a textile mill in Delaware, which really surprised me because I wasn't thinking of Delaware as being a place for textile mills, that manufactures fabric in natural fibers. I think I mentioned this to some of you who were on the Zoom call last month, and I'm looking into some of their fabrics and maybe promoting some things for them. We'll see how it all pans out. I did get some samples and I am optimistic, but we'll see how that happens. But yes, of course, I would like to bring you a US based textile mill that sells natural fibers and good quality fabric. We're still working on that. So that is definitely something. Do recycled textiles give off a toxic gas? If not, we should have a recycled textiles mill using old clothes. Here's the problem with old clothes. If they're natural fibers, they disintegrate. This is why I'm not a fan of thrift flipping and going to buy used clothing at, Salvation Army or Goodwill and making things out of it or franken fabricking things together, because natural fibers naturally disintegrate. That's why we have no textiles from, ancient Egypt or India or any of these places where textiles originated, because they all disintegrated. The fabrics that don't disintegrate are all the synthetic fibers like polyester and nylon and acrylic and all of that kind of stuff. And yes, I'm going on a rant here because I feel very strongly about this. I don't want to make clothes out of those kind of fabrics. With the exception of the knit fabrics that I have in my stash, I would much rather buy new fabric that is 100% cotton and, much better quality, and then sew something that fits really well and wear that. As far as reusing stuff, if you want to cut up polyester clothing and remake that, more power to you. That's an option for sure. That's just not what I think when I want to sew. I want to make something that's custom for me, that's going to be gorgeous and fit well, and I'll spend the money on it. So, but I really like natural fibers. They breathe better. I love wool, though I don't get to wear it often here in Texas. Silk, huge fan of silk. I bought a lot of it when high fashion closed. And, yeah, some of my knits are polyester, but they're new. Nobody else has worn them and sweated in them. And, that's a whole nother topic. So I won't go down that road, but everyone gets Wawa catalogs in the mail. If you're on the list, that's fantastic. So Christy's saying that I'm guessing we're still talking about Michael's here, is fully stocked, but you're in a small town. So maybe that would work. Bonnie said she just looked it up and Mood is set to open in Houston next month. That's awesome. Yes. Also, maybe go look into a part-time job. I got to go get on that if that's happening that quickly. I think, Diana, that it's on Alabama somewhere, which I'm going to put downtown. I would think that if Mood was opening a store, that's where they'd put it, because there's space on Alabama downtown, but rent's high. So who knows? Maybe not. But we shall see. So Kay is saying that this is for Carolina. Peggy Saggers has a brick and mortar store in Dallas. It's open on the weekends. Cool thing is she often shows her fabrics during her webcast during Shorts Week. That is from Silhouette Pattern, so you can check that out. She does have a YouTube channel as well. So let's see. Hello, we have two ladies from Jamaica joining us. Hello, ladies. Thank you so much. We've got Sandy and Keisha. So thank you, ladies, for joining from Jamaica. Let's see. Pennsylvania had textile mills too. Yes. I never got to experience that. I have watched ladies weave fabric in India when I traveled there in high school. I always thought that was very, very cool. And, if I had space for a loom, I would set one up and just kind of mess around with that, because I think that that would be fun. But yeah, I think on a small level, you can have, local stuff, and we'll see. We'll see if weaving and textile production comes back to the US or not. I suspect that once the current administration is out of power, that the tariffs are going to go away and everything will just kind of go back to the way it was. And I think everybody's just going to put up with it between now and then. It does mean an increased price hike on all textile related goods for us in the meantime, which I'm not a huge fan of, but, a lot of the fabric I've already bought is in my stash. So it was before those days. I would love it if, textile production would come back to the US. I think it would be really good for the economy to just have that here. I mean, like, I just I love textiles and fabric, as I have mentioned many times to all of you, because that is just my thing. And it's sad to me that we don't have that kind of production anymore. Wool is another thing that basically we stopped manufacturing. Like from we got the sheep, people shear. They will. I mean, like the yarn scouring plant, the only wool scouring plant. So that's where after the wool is shorn from the sheeps, they put it into big bales and they ship it to have it cleaned and get all the lanolin out of the wool and get any twigs or dirt or anything that, has accumulated in the wool out. And there's only one plant left, and it's here in Texas. It's in San Angelo, which is on I-10 on the way to West Texas. It's heading out west. That's the only one left in the country, and there used to be numerous ones all over the countries. There's like one place, I believe in the Northeast somewhere, that will take wool and spin it into yarn on a large scale kind of process, so that then that could be woven into fabric in theory. But there aren't really any textile mills. So I read a very interesting book on, it's called Vanishing Fleece, and that's what it's about. It's about wool from the sheep farms, and then shearing the sheep, and then the whole process of this wool. And it just kind of made me sad that we don't have that anymore. But it seems like there's a loss of textile knowledge being passed down around the world. It seems like a lot of the younger generations, even in other countries, are not as interested in keeping things moving forward. When I was at my YouTube conference, I ran into a woman who has a company. It's called Angel Chang, if you want to check it out. Cost prohibitive for me, but the concept is very, very cool. It's like a zero waste, zero pollution fashion company where she has the cotton is grown in China. It is harvested. It is, combed and spun into yarn, and then it is woven, and then it is sewn into garments. And it's all in the same village in like rural mountain China, and made by, women who live there. Most of them look a little bit elderly, but from the pictures. But she was at the YouTube conference to look into, have starting a YouTube channel to kind of document this, which I highly recommended that she do. I said, I'm just going to watch it because I love textile production. But if you want to check it out, you can see some of the gorgeous fabrics that are handmade by women in China. And she did tell me that she's looking at other women's groups to do this sort of thing in India and in Africa, which I thought was very interesting. So just as an aside, like she was saying that there is a lack of interest from youth in China and in Japan and in India to keep moving forward with these traditional textile methods, which is really sad when you think about it, because it's once it's gone, it's gone. It's like nobody's going to have the access to still create these incredible handmade textiles that that used to be around, that used to be very common. And I think when you look at the history of textile production, it originally was very small scale, and people wore one thing over and over. Maybe they had something they could change into when they washed whatever their number one thing was. But with the advent of the Industrial Revolution and mass production of textiles, and then textile mills, but even those have all gone overseas at this point. So, it's an interesting predicament that this modern world has gotten itself into. And I'm going off on another textile tangent, but it's something that I think about a lot because I just love fabric. So if this mill in Delaware does turn out to be, a good quality fabric that I feel confident to recommend to all of you, and that the prices are good so that it's reasonable, I will do that. And that is still waiting to be seen. So Diana's saying you should come now to see the cotton that's been machine collected around. Farmers haven't picked them up. Oh, I haven't. I I drove to Austin yesterday, and all the cotton fields were barren, but there were little cotton bolls along the highway. And I thought about stopping to pick them up, and then I was like, well, they're probably dirty, so I won't do that. But nice to know down south where you are. I did not stay on 59. I turned off on spur 10. So yeah, I love those huge cotton bales that are just out there, and they look like they're just so big and fluffy. I just want to go touch them. I'm sure that's frowned upon, but it is my personal feeling. I have when I was driving on the same road, I did go pull some cotton off of one of the plants that before it got harvested, but I didn't make it out there early enough this year. So um, yeah, I think the only other plus about Michael's having some sewing type things, the last point that I wanted to make is that, like Joann's, Michael's has regular coupons. So, if you need something like rotary cutter blades or a new rotary mat, or, maybe you need to stock up on some thread, wait for that coupon because it's coming. And if you just sign up for their mailing list, you automatically get 25% off. And, as of right now, none of the sewing stuff is on sale. So you can use that coupon. And yeah, so let's see. One last comment. Connie's saying that she found a huge selection of fabric at the National City Flea Market. They sell leftovers from the LA Fabric District. Yes. And in New York, there are stores where they buy seconds from the designers and the leftovers sometimes. And so Metropolitan Textiles, where I went there in my New York video description, in the link in the description below if you want to check that out. They did have a wide variety of fabrics. I did pick up some fun things there. I know that Mood does as well. They pick up dead stock from designers. I picked up some beautiful fabrics that were from past collections at reasonable prices. So that was very exciting. And, it's wherever you can find it. There's a little fabric store in Broussard, Louisiana called A&A Fabrics. And they do not have it's mostly a quilting fabric shop. So quilting fabric, number one. Number two, super fancy velvets and satins and chiffons for Mardi Gras costumes. Lots of also beaded fabrics that are gorgeous. And then they have a little small section of dead stock. And you can find some amazing pieces in there. If you happen to be in Broussard, Louisiana, it is not on the beaten path. You have to drop off of I-10 and drive through Lafayette to get there, but it is worth a visit if you're ever in the area. So Christy's asking how I feel about creative reuse stores. There's 1 hour and a half from here. I don't know. I have never been to one. They have a place here called Art Asylum where you can go and donate art supplies and fabrics and that kind of stuff. And I have heard that they have fabric, but I have never been because I really don't need more fabric. I mean, I went and saw my friends at Leo 9 yesterday, and I bought more fabric. I actually bought fabric to fix my tunic dress. If you saw that last month, that is a tunic length and not a dress length. I got fabric to be able to make the skirt longer, so I will actually wear it. And then I picked up another fabric that I fell in love with that I'm going to be making a Vogue pattern with. That will be coming up probably next month. So keep an eye out for it. Thank you everyone for joining in today. I know I started a little bit late. I was trying to get my videos queued up and I had to get them off my phone, and there's a little bit of technical difficulties at the beginning. So thank you so much for sticking around and joining in on the conversation. I think we all have really mixed feelings about this, and I don't think that it's necessarily going to be something that lasts very long. I'm going to go through my thread stash and see what I need, and if there's any colors. I'm running low on white and black thread, ironically enough. I did buy some big spools before Joann's closed, but I can always pick up a couple of those to just be on the safe side. But thank you again. I will be live next month. I'm not sure when, because I got to look at when Thanksgiving falls, and usually it's the third Saturday of the month. If you are just joining this live stream late or you didn't know about it, be sure to sign up for the newsletter. I will put the link in the description below so you can check that out. That is the best way to know when I'm live and to stay up to date on everything happening here at So Lounge. I do send out emails about the live stream every month. I'm trying to do better and send out emails more regularly, so that you can keep up on the pulse and keep hanging out and sewing and for relaxation and creativity and developing your personal style. I'll be here for you. That is my goal, and there's going to be great new content coming up between now and the end of the year. So you definitely want to check that out. Get on the mailing list. My fabric course is going to be launching. It is going to be pre-launching to the mailing list only. So if you're interested in that, be sure you're on the list and you will be the first to know. Thank you, everybody. I am so happy to spend my Saturdays with you. And I really hope you have a wonderful weekend and get a chance to get some